I often get comments from viewers who have a traditional or mainstream view of statins and cholesterol. They seem to believe that they're informing me, and if only I knew what they knew and would listen to reason, then I would drop my statin hesitant stance. They write about all the benefits of statins and the evils of cholesterol without questioning their assumptions, which they probably don't even realize they're making. We're going to take a look at some of them today. Stay tuned. First, I want to make a point that I'm not anti-science. I believe in the scientific method. I believe in its self-correcting capabilities, but we have to always take anything that we hear, especially in the field of medicine and health, with a grain of salt because things change rapidly. For example, when I was a kid growing up, there were ads where doctors were recommending particular brands of cigarettes. Here's a vintage ad from probably the 50s talking about the benefits of sugar and how you have to make sure that your children get sugar every day, with this admonition for the parents that your child can get too tired and cranky if they don't have enough sugar. There are medications that have been approved that have been taken off the market. The one of most pertinence to us, of course, is Baycol or Cerivastatin because of the high incidence of rhabdomyolysis among the people who were taking this drug. We've also been told that eggs are bad, and then eggs became good. Margarine was really good for us and butter was bad. And now many of us will say it's exactly the opposite. Canola oil was the big thing. I remember my wife coming home excited to say, hey, there's this new stuff, canola oil, supposed to be really good for us. It's a seed oil, so file it away with all of the rest of those. I had a conversation with a friend the other day when I said, well, I was going out hiking, and when I'm out hiking, I really don't eat the healthiest of food. And he was surprised. He said, well, I would think that you're eating like granola bars and stuff like that. Isn't that healthy? So that's the state of health and dietary knowledge among the average person in the world today. We're told that high cholesterol is bad. That's another one. In some circumstances, it undoubtedly is, and others probably not. Our understanding of health is constantly evolving. For example, the biggest risk factor when it comes to cardiovascular disease is not cholesterol, it's insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, followed by smoking and high blood pressure, with excess weight being another factor. Hypercholesterolemia or cholesterol levels, even by the risk calculators that are out there that the mainstream medical profession uses, has high cholesterol way down on the list. So why do they push statins? Well, that's something that's easy to treat. You can push cholesterol numbers down with statins, and it works for most people. Whether that's good or effective or not, it's a whole nother story. So let's look at some of the comments or some of the ideas that have been presented to me by viewers who disagree, and I don't mind that they disagree with me. I leave their comments up as long as they're not rude. Everybody should be able to express their opinion, and that includes on this channel. First one I want to look at is, somebody said, I take a statin and now I'm far better off. My cholesterol is perfect. There are several assumptions in there. First of all, that a particular cholesterol number is a one-size-fits-all, and it's perfect if you can get to that particular number, no matter how you get there. And that even if we grant that's the case, the idea that medication getting you there is the same as it being achieved naturally is an assumption. One person told me, well, higher cholesterol is never healthier. That's actually ridiculous even by mainstream standards. If you had somebody with a level of about 190 milligrams per deciliter, which is about 5 millimoles per liter, and they had very low HDL, around, say, 20 milligrams per deciliter, or about half a millimole per liter, you wouldn't say that they were far better off than somebody who was, say, at 5.1 millimoles per liter, 200 milligrams, who had maybe 2.0 millimoles per liter for HDL, which is around 78 or 80 milligrams per deciliter. Clearly, the person with a slightly higher cholesterol would be far better off. So this idea that higher cholesterol is never healthier just doesn't hold water. Another comment I got, any reduction is worth taking. Somebody argued this with me. They proposed this directly to me. And this ignores all trade-offs and ignores the risk tolerance of each individual. This person is seriously telling me in a very friendly manner, saying it's all about playing the odds and getting the risk down as much as possible. But the thought that any reduction, no matter how small, is worth taking with a medication that comes with all the baggage that statins come with, it's just an assumption that I can't go with. Next one is, well, very few people get adverse effects. Well, this is based on data from trials that are not designed to detect adverse effects. They have washout periods where people who are given the drug are allowed to drop out of the trial for any reason, but typically one would imagine that it would be adverse effects. So when you have a trial that is not designed specifically for adverse effects and is designed for effectiveness among people who stay in the trial, then you can't use that trial to say that there are very few adverse effects. One person told me, oh, it's only 2%. That's a traditional number that gets bounced around in the literature, and that is an outright lie. Usually I just say, hey, it's a matter of a difference of opinion, but when you tell me that only 2% of people on statins have adverse effects, that's just plain a lie. Next one is medications are the only way to control cholesterol. There's a couple of assumptions in there. First is that the cholesterol needs to be controlled. Then the assumption that they're really stating is that the medications are the only way to do that. That may be true for people with familial hypercholesterolemia. If it's not statins, maybe it's bempedoic acid or PCSK9 inhibitors or something like that. It may be true for people with very poor quality lipid panels. As a counterexample, I can easily get my total cholesterol down quite a bit by simply going on a multi-week backpacking trip. And when I come back, my cholesterol will be way down, enough to satisfy even my traditionalist primary care physician. So the bottom line is, this is outright false. Diet and exercise can affect your cholesterol. Now, you should be more concerned with whether it affects your cholesterol in a qualitative manner more than quantitative. And that's the problem. We emphasize too much the quantity rather than the quality of our lipid panel results. This next one comes from a video where I pointed out about the mortality rates being a U-shaped curve around 220 milligrams per deciliter, and I think that's maybe about 5.3, something like that, for millimoles per liter, had the lowest all-cause mortality. And that was from a Korean study. I think in my last video I said it was 14 million. That was a mistake. It was 12.4 million Koreans, but still a lot of people were tested. But what the person was telling me is low cholesterol is associated with higher mortality because of diseases that lower cholesterol and from old people getting on statins too late. In other words, lower cholesterol is better, and these exceptions are actually distorting the data. I looked into this, and I found that such diseases, while they do exist, are diseases that will cause a person to have very low cholesterol. These are very rare. This chart I just brought up is the relative all-cause mortality at the different total cholesterol levels. And what they're telling me is that that slope to the left, where the lower cholesterol levels lead to much higher mortality, is because it's skewed by the people who have the lower cholesterol levels, either because of age or because of these diseases. Well, as I've said, the diseases that cause low cholesterol are very, very rare from everything I've read, and they wouldn't change this very much at all. More to the point, the assertion that it's people who, as they got older, realized that high cholesterol was hurting them, and then they try lowering it, whether it's through statins or whatever, and those efforts just aren't successful because they do it too late. Well, this study, this is from the 12.4 million people, shows that that's not really the case, because with the exception of the people between 18 and 34 who were measured, the lower cholesterol was associated with much higher mortality in all the other age groups, and the younger age groups were worse than the older age group. So if this was just an artifact of older people finally getting their act together and trying to get their cholesterol down, the data just doesn't back it up. It's just total nonsense. The next assumption that I see being made, and it's not from any particular quote here, is just that randomized controlled trials are not biased. And I see this whenever somebody quotes at me, well, this study showed this. And I do it too. I say that, well, a study showed this or that. We really need to consider the biases that are built into these studies. Is it just coincidence that the ones that are sponsored by the pharmaceutical companies seem to have a much higher success rate, in the sense that they show more positive results than the ones that are done independently? I think that we'll never be able to trust randomized controlled trials completely until they're all done independently under some agency that we can trust to actually do it right. That may be hard to get done in today's environment. So for my closing thoughts, all these assumptions are hidden, and that makes them the most dangerous kind. They're visible to the people making them. We need to recognize them for what they are. Some may turn out to be true. Others certainly will not, and some we may never get a definitive answer for. The best we can do is continue questioning these assumptions, and even some of our own that we may not realize we're making. We could be ready to adjust our lifestyle using the best knowledge that we have, and be willing to change and refine as new knowledge becomes available. What I think is happening with these comments is these people really aren't trying to persuade me or to convince me that I'm wrong. I think they're trying to convince themselves that it's okay for them to be taking statins. And I want to point out that I actually have no interest in making somebody uncomfortable with the decision to take statins if that's what they're doing. If you're taking a statin and you're comfortable with that and you believe the data behind it or you believe it's giving you benefit of some kind, by all means, don't let me change your mind. My purpose is to help the other people. I want to help people who have decided to not take statins or are questioning whether they should be taking statins to be comfortable and confident with that decision. That's what I've got on this topic. If you appreciate this content, please like, share, subscribe, and comment on this or other topics you'd like me to cover. And if there's any particular one of these assumptions you want me to get into in more depth, I'd be glad to do that. If you haven't seen this video, I recommend you take a look at it now. Thanks for listening.